On to 12. Welcome everyone to the November 12th, 2024 school board meeting. Zach will be joining us late. He is in the city council chambers fighting for our CIP budget, so he's gonna be a few minutes late. Patty's here. She can help us out if we need anything, but Zach will be joining us momentarily. Patty, could you call the roll call?
Sure. Susan Ross. Liz Barrett. Tish Campbell.
Here.
Nancy Clayberg.
Here.
Pip Blues.
Here.
Brian French.
Here.
Lee Hudson.
Here.
Byron Maddow.
Here.
Eric
Yeah.
Nolte. Here. Lisa Rappaport.
Here.
Eric Moore.
Here.
Nathan Delaney.
Here.
Oh, there comes Zach. Okay, would like to, would like to welcome, Eric Moore. He's our new teacher representative. Eric, you are at the high school
Yes,
and you teach.
one of the art teachers, one of the three,
Oh, great.
I'm sorry, I missed that.
one of the art teachers.
Oh, okay, thank you.
Thanks.
Well, welcome.
Thank you.
We appreciate you being here.
Happy to be here.
We love to have a teacher representative and a student representative. Nathan does a great job. Okay, shall we stand for the Pledge of Allegiance?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Next, we have announcements and recognitions. How are you, Zach?
I will tell you that one announcement is that I left Brian next door to answer questions connected with CIP. So we presented along with other department heads that is ongoing as we speak. They just wrapped up the presentation part of the show, so my apologies for being a minute or two late. And now if there are any questions, Brian's gonna field those questions for the school department. But our projects included, I think the board remembers, that our projects include general upgrade kind of element sheet, which focuses primarily on, it'll be high school paving and roofing. We have a sheet that includes projects connected to elementary school improvements. Those will be happening in 26 and FY 26 and FY 29 at New Franklin. We have a piece of the plan, which is for FY 30, which is the anticipation of the 25-year cycle on career and technical education centers, and that we'd be in part of that cycle. Right now, we're earmarking a $10 million project as part of that work. 3 million of which would need to be raised locally, 7 million, which we anticipate would be from the state. And the last element sheet that was included as a request in this cycle was connected to elementary school playgrounds. $100,000 in the upcoming FY 26 year for planning and permitting. And then we would cycle through with three, where our earmark right now is three $500,000 projects. At Little Harbor, which would include the primary playground at Little Harbor and the PEEP in the same summer, and then we would move to New Franklin and then cycle back to Dundero, who would most recently had done work. So that's the conversation that we were just having with all the other, I think, the 100 projects that are proposed as part of the CIP over the period of time that they were looking at. That was a conversation we were just having with the city council, planning board combined this year. So still a couple more phases to go, but that's the latest on it. And I'm working my other two announcements. So anyone else has announcements while I'm trying to get my laptop up, go for it.
Does anyone else have announcements?
I've got a quick one.
Yes, Lisa.
I just want to give a big thank you to all of the volunteers and bakers and voters and helpers who made all the bake sales at all of our schools happen this year. The presidential election years are usually great revenue opportunities for our PTAs at all of the schools. And this money goes towards field trips and teacher appreciation and a lot of great enrichment, and takes a lot of volunteers. So I just want to say thank you to our community for supporting it and everybody who makes it happen.
Which includes police equipment at a time.
Yeah.
So
The last one.
Yeah, no, it's good, but yeah, there's a lot.
Thank you, Lisa. Anyone else? I think we all get the newsletters from the schools. And what caught my eye was at the middle school, which wasn't there when my kid, well, the middle school was there, but this program wasn't there. They have ice skating at Puddle Dock Pond, the outdoor skating rink at Prescott Park for middle school kids. It's a 5-week session and they can sign up and go ice skating, which includes a lesson. So I thought that was kind of cool. We collaborate so much with entities in our community. And this is another example of that, how we can take advantage of what we have in Portsmouth and offer opportunities to our students. So that caught my eye. Did you want to go or anyone else?
It's a couple other quick ones. I just wanted to thank the high school band. So yesterday, the city did its Veterans Day ceremony. And the high school band and our students in so many different ways are really important in terms of kind of the cultural life of our community. And I thought that they showed really well, not only, and I know I talked to band director after, it's not just that they're really excellent in the performance of the music, but the way in which they conduct themselves, posture, how to hold their instruments and pause at the appropriate time, how to exit with class, and to just to do all the little things that really bring some gravitas to an important ceremony for a lot of veterans and families in our community. And they do that at a lot of different things. And it's not just the band, but the band is one of those really important outreaches, I think, from the school community to the community at large. And I just want to thank the students and the faculty who were involved in all that, and some of the technical people, folks like Matt Toby, who works at our AV elements of our technical department, are there on that day, running around, moving around, speakers and things. And these are all these are skilled people who put in a lot of time. I just want to thank all those folks. Also want to mention, saw some really good instruction around the election, had the opportunity to go into classrooms and watch some students who were grappling with, things like, what is this electoral knowledge thing? And I missed the quote. I was a few minutes late, but one of the classic quotes coming out of one of the classrooms was a student who said, "Do people know about this? Which was great, but my favorite was had the opportunity, and I didn't know that it was happening, but I just happened to walk into Zero the day before the election. Kindergarten classes were having a cookie election, and the kids all in all the different kindergarten classrooms had to vote on their favorite cookie. They had to make, some of them made a case about why, their cookie was the best cookie. And as I walked in, they all had little hats that they had made that were like, "I voted in the cookie election 2024. And then what was great, as they were coming back in, they were going to find out who won. The teacher sat them all down and then talked about, okay, so we're going to make an announcement about who wins. It's going to be Oreos, it's going to be chocolate chip, or is it going to be I don't know how to describe them, the Hannaford, like cakey, frosty, sprinkly one? You know what I'm talking about. It's almost like a cheat, it's like a cookie and a cake. And so they talked through, like, here are the big three that were part of the election, and then talk to the students about, and this kindergarten students, talk to the students about, okay, so when we make the announcement about who wins, how, if your cookie doesn't win, are you gonna get and how are you gonna act? And if somebody else gets really excited, and are you gonna get mad at them because they're excited about what happened? And if you win, how can you be excited but not do it in a way that is like intentionally upsetting to your friend? And all the kids were talking about it. How are we going to do this? What that's going to look like? And then they revealed the results. And then a bunch of kids jumped out of their chairs and excited. But it was a great. I had an opportunity to talk to kindergarten teachers after, as the kids are all eating, by the way, the winner was the sprinkly frosty, whatever. I feel like it's a good cheat. But that one won. And as all the kids are sitting down enjoying their cookie, and you know, in kind of being in the moment of that, it was great to talk to those teachers and be like, this is such a smart, well-designed thing for kids at this age group to be able to start to internalize and hardwire what does it mean to be a citizen in a republic? And how does that work? And what are like these four kind of foundational things that we need to have, that we need to have our citizens understand and know. Yeah, I just thought they did an awesome job at that developmental level of kindergarten. And kids enjoyed it and they were thoughtful about it. And teachers framed it in a really good way. And it was in a way that was, you'd have no idea whatever these teachers, their own kind of political kind of worldviews or thought processes were, that did not come across at all in what they talked about and how they and what they did for the kids. But that was outstanding. And I just want to thank them as one example of a lot of really good work that was done around the election across the district. And then I was just going to say on the heels of that, just to say thank you to the city clerk's office. This is a really hard one to, this is anytime you have a general election, it's really, it's challenging, lots of logistics involved, lots of coordinating with us. To try to be, you know, to have the least amount of disruption possible to our operations. Most of the voting does happen in our space. I just want to thank the city clerk's office and DPW for all the work that they did around making it as seamless as possible in connection to what's happening on our campuses. And I think ultimately it worked out very well when we were done in session. I think it would have been very difficult for us to be able to conduct our operations at the same time everything that's happening in the turnout was as large as it was at times. So we'll talk more about elections and impact on calendar in a few minutes. But I did just want to thank the city clerk's office and all of our folks working with the city clerk's office.
Thank you. Anyone else? Oh, yes, Tim.
Mine is more of a question and not a recognition. The Portsmouth High play this year. When is it and what is it? Do we have that information?
Beauty and the Beast.
Beauty and the Beast.
And I think, is it Thursday next week is opening night or Friday? I should know this. I have a kid and crew.
I think it's Thursday. Rehearsals are going on, but
Yeah.
I think it's Thursday.
I think it's Thursday.
Thursday.
Sorry, I can check.
Okay, and can we buy tickets right
Yep.
there?
You can.
That is more of an announcement, I guess.
Well done. Asking for a friend.
Today.
Yeah.
I told him.
Yeah.
And I love Beauty and the Beast, so.
It's my favorite. Okay, before we move on, I want to introduce Susan Ross, who's here representing SAU 50. Susan, which community? Right. Right. Okay, well, welcome. It's nice to have you here. Very much. Liz, did you have something?
Yeah, I apologize. I was late. Circled around a bunch to try to find a parking spot. And ended up making myself one. So but I wanted to say, I don't know if it was said, but I just want to thank everybody that did the bake sales. I know Lisa did a lot with the middle school, but you know, a lot of people cooking, a lot of people raising money for school. So I just wanted to throw that out there. Thank you for all the bake sale volunteerism.
Thank you. I'm still eating the muffins for my breakfast.
You're the one.
Okay, thank you, everyone. Next item on the agenda is the October 22nd regular meeting minutes. Do we have a motion to approve? Motion to approve? Do
Second.
we have a second? Any discussion? Yep.
Sorry, I'm clearly slacking.
All in favor? Aye.
Abstain, I wasn't there.
Oh, okay. Any against? And then an abstention. Okay, thank you, everyone. Now we move on to our public comment in person and Zoom. We start with, let me explain a little bit. First of all, please come up to the microphone and state your name and address, and you will have 3 minutes to speak. Brian will be timing us and let us know when you're getting near the end. So the first one I have on the list is Will Galot.
Oh, Julie.
Julie, oh, sorry. My cataracts are acting up.
Hi. What? So Julie Gallant, 10 Fletcher Street. I'm here tonight to talk about redistricting. I was part of the memorandum that was presented at the last redistricting subcommittee meeting that provided 188 signatures that all agreed to slow down the process. I want to echo that tonight and ask that the following items kind of just be involved in the discussion. I did have the opportunity to meet with Zach, Harry, Byron, and Principal Simons over at New Franklin. So what I'm wondering, if it could be involved in the discussion tonight, is there a time the entire board can speak directly to the 3 elementary school principals so they can explain what the proposed change would look like at their school? What does programming look like at each school, and how will each school be impacted by this proposed change? I know Zach and I did spend some time asking for that definition just to become a little bit clearer. What is programming? How will after-school care be impacted by this change? Currently, New Franklin has 245 students. 104 are enrolled in MC3, which is a grant-funded after-school program, and 28 students are on the wait list. This says that more than half of the student population at New Franklin utilizes after-school care. This just speaks to the demographics there. This program costs $10 a day per child or $50 a week for full tuition for every single day. Peak is the after-school program at Little Harbor, which is where a lot of these kids are going to be onslaughted to go. And it costs $156 a week for 5 days compared to $50 a week. So it is quite a substantial financial difference to be transferred to that school. And I also know there is a wait list at Little Harbor for peak. And I'm wondering, how do you anticipate accommodating these children for after-school programming with this proposed change? Will the recommendation from the redistricting committee actually meet the proposed goal of equitable use of classroom space? If so, when and for how long? I also just found out this evening that there's an input session tomorrow at 8 a.m. at New Franklin, finding out at 6:30 at night, and I'm a parent at that school, and I just don't know what's going on with the communication with that, but I'm requesting more proactive and transparent communication on next steps in scheduling and community input sessions. Yeah, so I guess I'm just a little bit disappointed in that particular thing, because I know that there has been a lot of talk about community engagement, and so far there's been a meeting at the library, a public redistricting committee meeting that added public comment on at the last minute and broadcasted this via social media. It wasn't necessarily on the website. And there was a survey, which I appreciate. And now there's this public session tomorrow at New Franklin, and it just is hard to stay on top of everything. So I'm wondering if there's a more centralized way of communicating all that information out to the public. Thank you.
Thank you, Julie. Next, we have Matthew Turk.
Hello,
No.
my name is Matt Turk, and my wife and I live on Hillside Drive. My family and I have 3 children who attend Dondero. They are in kindergarten, 1st grade, and 3rd grade that this redistricting affects directly. As a military family, Dondero has provided a much needed sense of consistency for our children during my time away. When we bought our house, we made the choice based on the school district. That choice is now being taken out of our hands, and there's no way to move currently in Portsmouth in this current market. The recent discussions about redistricting have evolved to 3 specific neighborhoods. When you look at the map, why would Osprey suddenly be removed from the conversation? It seems counterintuitive when trying to redistrict fairly. While I appreciate the effort to gather community input through a survey this past week, it's important to recognize that not everyone is directly affected by this change. It's easy for those who won't experience the disruption to comment on the issue. To date, there has been no compelling data presented to justify the need for redistricting. Why should my children be subject to significant upheaval for a potential issue that may never materialize? If the redistricting process does proceed, I strongly urge the board to provide the families the option to remain at their current school if they choose. It's clear that our children deserve the stability and the best possible educational environment. Thanks for your time, your effort, and what you guys do. My wife and I appreciate it.
Thanks for your service.
Thank you, Matthew. Yes, and thank you for your service.
Thank you.
Caitlin Beach.
Good evening. My name is Caitlin Beach and I live at 258 Melbourne Street. My husband and I are both Portsmouth High graduates and our two daughters will be students in the Portsmouth school system starting in 2026 and 2029. The school board has agreed upon a set of guiding principles for this work, with one of the principles being neighborhoods kept together. The current proposal fails to honor this principle. Please consider how long the neighborhoods affected by redistricting will be in transition should all K-5 students and their younger siblings attend New Franklin, while all other firstborn children starting in 2025, aged the same as the younger siblings, attend Little Harbor. From listening to public comment, it appears the board has only heard from families of children currently enrolled in the elementary schools slated to potentially transition to a different elementary school. It is important, however, to hear from families who will be affected for the next 12+ years. The families with firstborn children who start elementary school in 2025 or later. If current students and their younger siblings, my children's ages, attend New Franklin School, while my children attend Little Harbor School, then this means that my daughters and their neighborhood friends will never go to elementary school together. They will lose a childhood of shared experiences. They will lose the closeness of neighbors who learn together. They will be forever separated in their childhood educational experience. We chose to raise our family in a neighborhood so our children would not only be connected to their peers at school, but also as they transition to their lives at home. Not seeing their neighborhood friends and connecting with neighborhood families at school events, concerts, the bus stop, etc., is simply wrong, especially since this division and separation within the neighborhood would not be due to a personal choice, like sending a child to private school, but rather a plan that our school board has created and determined for us. This is not what is best for our community, our neighborhood, or our kids. The original plan, which was developed in coordination with our highly qualified and capable administrators and educators, called for a 2-year transition period. With the updated proposal of grandfathering current students, the transition period will now be 5 years. And if younger siblings enrolling in 2025 or later are also grandfathered in, that means we'll be looking at a 12-year transition period. Although my youngest daughter is only 6 months old, this means she will never attend school with her neighborhood friends who have older siblings already enrolled at New Franklin until she's in middle school. A transition period of this length simply does not make sense. Grandfathering students will isolate families within the impacted neighborhoods. In contrast, there are many benefits to moving a large group of neighborhood kids together. Please be deliberate and careful when considering those benefits. Although change is challenging, we must remind ourselves and give credit to the resilience of our children. They will be in capable hands with the educators in Portsmouth. We have the opportunity to be thoughtful about what this transition will look like and can put supportive measures in place to ensure neighborhoods stick together and set children up for success. Please abide by your guiding principle to keep neighborhoods together. The current plan of allowing all currently enrolled K-5 students to remain in their school, as well as potentially grandfathering in their incoming younger siblings, will divide and isolate families within our neighborhood for 12+ years. That is far too long of a transition period. It is not what is best for our kids or our community. Thank you so much for your time and efforts.
Thank you, Caitlin. Is there anyone else that would like to speak? How about Zoom?
Nobody has their hand raised on Zoom.
Okay.
Nope, nobody.
Well, thank you, everyone. We'll declare the public comment closed. And we will move on to the superintendent's report.
So,
Nancy, can I make a request? Should we consider a motion to move the redistricting conversation to the beginning of the meeting so the parents who have come can hear that?
Second.
Yeah.
So suspend the
Motion,
rules.
sorry, I'm not.
Motion to
totally
suspend the
context yet.
rules.
Yeah, sorry.
Yeah.
Okay. so
We need a 2/3 vote.
Okay,
The roll call.
we have a motion. Do we have a second? Oh, I guess Liz second.
Yeah.
Do we need a roll call?
We need 2/3, yeah.
Okay, go ahead.
Liz Barrett,
Yes.
Tish Campbell,
Yes.
Nancy Clayberg,
Yes.
Pip Close,
Yes.
Brian French,
Yes.
Lee Hudson,
Yes.
Byron Matto.
Yeah.
Carrie Nolte,
Yes.
Lisa Rappaport.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, we will move up the discussion of the, that's item 8A. So we'll have Byron and Kerry make a report.
Thank you so much. Yeah, I have some slides prepared to go over some initial results from the community survey that we put out as a committee. And I also have some information gathered from the planning department that I think was hasn't been necessarily part of the conversation. I think would be helpful at this point. So am I in the Zoom?
I don't have you as a panelist. Did you get a link?
The survey closed yesterday, but we thought with all of the community discussion, it was important to do what we could with results, for this meeting and to help inform this discussion. The results that, we do have to share are pretty much the basic descriptives and the responses from folks. Anything at the level of like neighborhoods and comparing neighborhoods and what they would want will take a little more time just to geocode and do all that fancy analysis sort of stuff, but is still an opportunity as we go forward.
All right, good.
And are you ready? Okay. And the report of this presentation that Byron will go over, and then an initial report or an export from the survey will be available with the minutes and on the redistricting site. But it was literally pulled at 4 o'clock today after I finished my work hours, and will be up ASAP.
Great. So first I wanted to call out the new redistricting committee homepage. And a big thank you to Zach. I know he spent time on his off hours on the weekend putting together the site. It's got a wealth of information, sort of historical information about the committee, the various meetings we've had, the recordings. It's also got we put together a fact sheet that was aimed at partly to try and listen to the memorandum and provide sort of a better justification or facts around. So that was sort of one of the things that was driving that fact sheet, was trying to be responsive to the memorandum. All information is on this particular site. And again, big thank you to Zach for putting in the hours to pull that all together.
And I'm sorry, just to be clear, that's on the school board department website under district information, under that top menu category, and then it says redistricting committee, and it's under that link.
Great,
Just to be clear.
So the community survey went out, it was out for, I think 5-6 days, I don't remember the exact number, and just closed. And it went out to all of the Portsmouth Elementary schools via Parent Square, as well as PEEP. Was also posted on sort of the various social media groups in town. And also Kate Callahan, the principal at Dondero, sent it to area daycares and preschools. Pretty strong response. We got 568 responses, with 455 with current or incoming students into the district. And I wanted to talk about there's Gary had emailed the full results of the survey to the board, and that'll be in the minutes for everyone to see. There's quite a lot of information in there. So I tried to pull out some high level sort of quick hits in terms of some important data that we saw in there, and I wanted to call out. This was sort of the top choice of preferred transition and timeline, with 43% calling for year 25-26, which is this coming year, with grandfathering options, and then 25-26 at 18% with no grandfathering, and then 26-27 at 26% with grandfathering. The way you could look at this is about 2/3 looking at 25-26 as the year they would like this to happen, with the majority of those folks looking at grandfathering as a better option. And then into the specific grandfathering breakdown, stronger support for all existing students plus their siblings, followed closely by the all grandfathering, and then smaller or minority in terms of just the 3rd and 4th graders, or which would be 4th and 5th graders in 25-26. So those are some three high level. And then I just call out what people were looking for in terms of the important factors. Grandfathering again rising to the top in terms of big concern for the community, equitable class sizes, disrupt the least amount of students, and then maintain K-5 and socioeconomic breakdown. And then there's some smaller slices beyond that. I want to call out that we got a good amount of respondents from folks who don't have students currently enrolled, but they have incoming students. And this is just to show sort of the total, we had respondents who had kindergartners, 68 respondents to kindergartners in 25, 68, 26, and so on. So we were able to reach, some amount of the population of folks incoming into the district. Some other key takeaways, we had a question in there is if you were in the Don Darrow, New Franklin areas, if you were given the option to move to Little Harbor, would you choose? And we had 20 to 30 in Lafayette Park who chose to move to Little Harbor. I put 20 because 20 respondents wouldn't move, and 30 had something else and described a scenario which they were moving but had some specifics. There was strong sentiments against banded schools, the K1, 2, 3, 4, 5, not popular, as well as moving 5th grade to the middle school. And I thought that was an interesting takeaway for me was only 32% of respondents take the bus, large amount of walkers, large amount of bikers in our current scenario with the neighborhood schools. So I thought that was interesting information. So I just wanted to, this next slide is just to show the current, the main scenario we're discussing in the redistricting committee, which is these 3 neighborhoods we're focusing on right now. This was the most recent conversation focus, which has been Lafayette Park and Hillside and Powder House, my nice big blue arrows, moving towards Little Harbor, with 5 years of grandfathering. That is the current focus of the discussion. It doesn't mean that that's necessarily the recommendation the committee will come back to the board going forward, but I just want to say that's sort of framing for us in the community what the current discussion is. And I wanted to take a moment as well to look at some historical data and future data around, in some of the community comments, there's been a focus on real estate data and like planning board input and some more information about projecting out like what's our future is going to look like in terms of housing development and incoming students. And I wanted to take a minute to look at some information that helps to illuminate that. So this is the last 10 years of enrollment by the schools in the city of Portsmouth. You can see pretty, relatively steep decline in Little Harbor with this sloping upward trend in Don Darrow, and New Franklin maintaining relatively flat over that period of time. If you take that and you extrapolate out what will happen over the next 10 years, if we do nothing, sort of what we're seeing is sort of a negative growth of 1% per year at Little Harbor and a positive growth of 0.3, 0.5% at Don Darrow. And so this is what this looks like going forward. So I think this helps to illustrate a bit if we do nothing, potentially what the populations can look like, given the historic trend over the last 10 years. I also wanted to tie that into the NESDEC data that we have gotten. So we're sort of in the middle there in terms of the overall projection. And there's 3 bands here. There's the light green, the blue, and the dark green. The dark green is the K-5 elementary schools. And what NESDEC is saying is overall, it looks like generally a flat general population in over the next 10 years at the K-5 level, which if you go back and look at sort of what we've seen in trends, it's actually more optimistic in terms of the number of kids, more optimistic in terms of the number of kids that will be in the schools. But I think if you sort of put that over the top of the trend line of dropping in Little Harbor and increase in Don Darrow, it presents some risks in the current configuration. I also wanted to point out current developments in the Don Darrow area. So currently in construction, there's 53 market rate units at townhouses at Yokins Plaza. There's 95 market rate units at the Cinemagic and 19 workforce in that particular development. The Episcopal Church is going to slated for, this is approved by the planning board, not in construction yet. 51 workforce units, and then 72 market rate units approved at the iHeart radio station, which is a total of 270 units in the Dondero area. I just wanted to call out the workforce housing definition. It's important to know that it is not necessarily, quote, low income as a specific HUD definition, which is 60% of AMI, i.e. targeting folks who are making 60% of family four. Area AMI for family four is $117,000 a year. So 60% of that is like the income bracket that those particular units, the workforce units, would be targeting, just as like a context. And then this was, I pulled from, this was a report by RKG Associates to the Portsmouth Housing Authority in 2022. And it had an entry around student populations in the area. And I thought it was interesting because what it called out was that there was an increase in millennial households, and it could lead to increase in students in the coming 5 to 10 years. And I thought that was, it doesn't necessarily, it's a bit speculative, but I think is another sort of color in this conversation. So next steps as we see it now is tentative next steps. So the meeting tomorrow at the New Franklin School is not supposed to be a community input session. It's a meeting of the committee at New Franklin meant to talk specifically around the conditions at New Franklin School, space equity issues there, and the effect of the Powder House move. That's like really the focus of that particular meeting, not meant to be a community input session, specifically the work of the committee. We are committed to a second community forum. We had hoped to have it this week. Scheduling is difficult, so that looks like that's pushing out. We'll definitely be communicating that to the community the best we can in terms of when that is going to be occurring, ideally in the next week or two. I think post that community forum, we'll have another redistricting committee, ideally to finalize a board recommendation following that December board recommendation, though tentative and things could move and I could see this pushing. It'd be great, to finish our work on, quote, on time, but I could see it pushing potentially a little bit into the next year. So those were the slides I had prepared for this evening. And then Carrie had put out, sent an email to the board with the full data dump from the survey. And I don't know if board, I know is sort of short timing on that, but if board members had specific questions on that survey or wanted to dig into that, I think this would be a good time to do that. And that's what I had.
Well, thank you once again, Byron and Kerry, for your commitment to this committee, and Zach for assisting with putting it on the website. So I guess we'll open it up to board questions. Does anybody have any questions?
Yep, I'm just wondering first if the meeting tomorrow morning is gonna be on Zoom. That was very helpful with your last one.
So we're going to be at New Franklin. I don't know if we have technology.
We definitely don't have the same type
Yeah.
of opportunity that we had with
Yeah.
the new setup that we have in the school conference room.
Yeah.
I guess we can see what we can do.
We can, I mean, the baseline, we can run like a Zoom on a laptop and just
Yeah,
record
I
that way.
mean, we definitely can do
Yeah,
that. It's
yeah.
just not gonna be
Yeah,
the most
the
effective
fidelity, yeah,
presentation.
yep.
Liz.
This presentation is really helpful, and I think, pulling the data as much as we can and hearing from the community is really helpful. I think, our community members continue to bring great points up about, after school care. I understand that there's subsidies out there through the state, so if they were to transition, but it still doesn't answer our, substantial wait list after school care question that's kind of come up year after year. I'm not in the thick of it anymore, but at one point I was, and I know it's been an issue year after year. So I think that's sort of another topic we definitely need to tackle as a district. But maybe aside from the redistricting conversation, there needs to be a bigger conversation about after school care and the importance of it, and what is available. I guess I'm wondering, I guess for me, it has felt like a rush process in that, you know, I think I was on the committee before the committee on that that you guys are in, and I was sort of screaming that it was an issue, but nobody's listening to me. And now we're here and I realized that the work had started and there's a lot of work and there's really so much great intention behind this. But we have one meeting in December and we have back to back to back meetings in January and February. So to me, I would like to see the committee, and I know you're having a committee meeting tomorrow, really commit to maybe pushing this to January. So there could be like more thought and more community input and not such a rush timeline, given that we're going to be seeing everybody as a board together in January, back-to-back meetings. If we need to add on a non-public or we need to add on something to our meetings, you know, we could do that and sort of, you know, slow down this process a little bit so that we could sort of digest and make sure that whatever presentation is given to the board that night is, you know, gives the background, gives answers to people's questions, and also provides additional time for, you know, more community input here. I also am a little bit concerned with like the transparency. We've kind of been back and forth. So the process has been wonky. Obviously, we know better going forward of how we're going to do this. But, you know, a little bit concerned with, you know, meetings on Zoom, but then not recorded. Then we have, you know, meeting tomorrow, but then there's not public. So I think that creates a lot of confusion for the community. And so I think we need to clean up and clear up the process a little bit. I also felt like I watched the Zoom of the committee meeting last time, and it felt like the teachers were part of the committee, but at the end, there was like a speed up race to get done on the clock of what the committee time was. And there really wasn't a consensus of the committee of how to move forward. And I'm a little bit, yeah, I'd like to see the consensus of the committee have some consensus and then present to the board as a committee versus, you know, you guys having to really take the reins or, you know, do the data. I like having more of an agreement with the committee members that are there, because it seemed like there was a lot of confusion after that meeting. So I think for me, really kind of slowing this process down at this point, just a little bit, in where you're like giving yourself a little more time, saying, you know, now going forward, you're going to present, maybe it's the end of January, that still should be enough time to coordinate everything. And I guess my last question, or just a couple other points, the coordinating with the city regarding new buildings and changes in zoning, like they just changed the zoning in Newington. So what does that look like going forward? And is there a new mechanism now for the city to coordinate better with us when they are changing zoning, or these new buildings are coming in, or Christmas tree shops are coming in? Because it seems like, based on what's been going on, there's a lack of communication when these approvals are happening about how this is going to affect the schools. Lastly, just the transportation costs, like, has there been any, you know, it seems like if we're going to do 5 years and, you know, you're going to have one kid from a neighborhood getting on a bus and then everybody else is getting on a different bus, what does that look like? And, you know, have we really thoroughly like sussed out the transportation costs? But I appreciate all the time that everybody's put in. I appreciate the community input. I do think in the future, I think we need better processes of how we do these type of committees or whatnot. But I think, you know, it's trial by fire here and you guys have done a great job. So thank you.
Thank you, Liz. Yes.
Can I just, I was trying to capture
Yeah.
things, but it was a lot. So after school care.
After school care, I think needs to be a separate subject that we really need to delve
I'm just
into.
trying to.
Yeah,
outline the
to
things.
answer.
After school care, slow down process, transportation cost, zoning. Was there something else?
Yeah, I guess I want a consensus of the committee when you guys come forward to the board, that either, you know, you say, like for example, when I was in the committee before, there was 3 or 4 of us.
Let me,
I
I hear
think
you.
there-
Let me respond to those. I just want to make sure I got.
Yeah, but I just, when we came back to the board, there was 2 or 3 that said, no, we don't need to redistrict. And then there was me, and I wanted to be very clear on record that I said we needed to do something, right? So I kind of want to know, if you guys come back, is there a consensus of the committee? What is the consensus? And if there's not, if there's some people that are outliers, why are they the outliers?
Yep, that's reasonable. So I'll just go down those pieces really quick. The after school care, REC is actively, as you probably know, in the process of expanding after school options. I think there is a unique option at New Franklin that my child also benefits from, and that will have to be part of the transition. Those things I think are going to be longer term and not going to be worked out by the committee. So part of this is the sort of, the committee hopes to make a proposal, either do nothing, do something. And that's the broad view. And that, to me, as much as it's an absolute concern, would fall to the administration to coordinate and would have to happen once a decision is made. Because we can't really go through all the what ifs related to after school care, but it's definitely been a priority. As far as slowing down the process, which has come up in some of the survey pieces, I think that there's also pieces in the survey that says, why didn't you do this, last year? Why did you let it get to the point of a modular? So there's both pieces there, and that will be in the results. The entire timeframe was based on the budget models needing to be completed in February. So it's absolutely reasonable for this to go through January. We can, if we're working with 5 plans, it's probably a little more challenging to have and the implications of what the budgets are. But as things go, I mean, we can move it a little, but I think the biggest thing as the committee report comes out is going to be, does the board feel that change is necessary for next year? And I think that Byron and I both wholeheartedly think that it is necessary for next year. It comes up in the survey with classes of 24 at Dondero. And so making that decision will fall to the board. When the board wants to make that decision is also up to the board. So that December presentation doesn't have to be a vote if the board doesn't want to vote then, and can do more. We'll definitely have a consensus of the committee. I think that my impression of the last committee meeting was that the consensus was that we wanted to do a survey and reach out to more folks, and that's what we have done. And now we had talked about a forum, but we wanted to, as the new Franklin space concerns became more and more apparent across the fall, we wanted to be at New Franklin. And also we wanted to have an opportunity to look at the results as a committee before that forum, because we only want to be presenting plans that are feasible. And the survey is a big component of us figuring out what's feasible. As far as transportation costs, the total budget for busing for the district is 1.2 million. Plans like the banded schools we don't think that there's availability of buses to do that. Adding one other route is if we can get the bus to do that, which is what the current plans would require, or as our discussion has been, would be in the 75,000 range, or could be integrated with other routes. Again, a decision has to be made before all of those things can be negotiated with the bus company, because we don't run our own buses. And then the last piece about zoning is there are so many questions, and as part of the reason we're in this situation is that we had forecasted that these new neighborhoods coming online would go to Little Harbor and that would balance us out. And that didn't happen. So we know that there's a lot of new development and coming in Dondero, and that's the primary driver right now. Yes, we know that there's other things. I am hopeful that after we sort out this piece that Byron and I have some great ideas on how the future redistricting committee and committees can monitor the neighborhood and school enrollments way better in a way that we just didn't have capacity to before. And so as much as there's always going to be a new challenge and a new thing, one of the natures that we learned from planning early on in this process is that with building costs, with property costs, with everything, there's a lot of projects that are coming online that are getting approved or going through initial approvals and never happen because it's all based on funding streams and projections. And so it used to be that we could say all of these approved projects, we know that they're coming. That's not the case anymore. So it's just another variable that's really hard to pin down. Sorry, that was long, but those were all my 5 minutes.
I've got a couple of things. So one, in terms of, there was a mention of availability of after school care. So it just so happened to be at Little Harbor today and was having a conversation with Jessica Blah, who's the site-based manager for Seacoast Community School, Peak. And they don't have one. They've been able to put everybody on that. So there is also, in addition to that, there are upcoming conversations happening between and the committee is not gonna solve it, but I'm just saying, the wheels are in motion, where there's conversations that are gonna be happening between the city and rec and us and Seacoast Community School about that ecosystem and what's happening and to what extent there's the possibility of some rec-based programming that might assist in terms of the number of slots that are available. That's not, we're still in that kind of early stages of that conversation. But all that stuff is coming. Now, it doesn't deal with the fact that one of the challenges at New Franklin School is that MC3 is so successful in terms of the number of students that it takes and what it does and the price point, all those types of things, that the remaining students who might be interested in the after-school program are not enough to justify peak having a parallel program at New Franklin. So that was one issue when I first walked in the door, that was something they were dealing with, is that our business model doesn't support having a staff member at New Franklin, because there's just not enough students, because most of them are pulled off by. And then I just say on transportation, that you're right, if the recommendation was to go to banded schools, that was gonna be the biggest transportation cost. That was gonna require hubs and relocation spots and ultimately that might be a direction that the board goes. I think my impression is that there's clear consensus on the committee that we're not gonna end up recommending that. I think what you see in survey results is most of the survey respondents are not interested in that either. So the most expensive transportation option, I don't anticipate is something that we're gonna do. So then it comes back to one of the other questions we asked in the survey, which was purposeful, which was, how long are you comfortable with your kid being on a bus? And part of that is around our ability to reallocate within our existing contract. How much reallocating could we do in order to provide grandfathering and not have to add multiple buses to the bus fleet in order to do it. Some of that might just be around time. And so that was part of what we're asking, why it was purposeful why we're asking that question as well.
I guess just to follow up with the transportation though, you have kids being picked up at Patriots Park that are on bus for an hour. So, or more, they're getting picked up at, or I guess, no, so I guess they're getting picked up at, I'm sorry, I think they're getting picked up, closer to 8 AM, I guess, right? So 8 AM. So that, yeah, so I mean, you have high schoolers though getting, that are there for longer. So you're talking about elementary school kids, how long elementary school kids?
Yes. So-
Maybe
so
I guess I'm just concerned that like busing and the ability of a bus to like pull into Patriots Park or like take more time or whatever has been an issue in the past. So to be like, okay, we're gonna spend $75,000 to add another bus to accommodate students choosing which school they go to because of redistricting seems a little bit like, you know, it's counterintuitive a little bit if we're trying to not spend the money on units at Dondero. So I guess, I don't know. I think, I guess with that said, I think the other thing is that I think the committee has had answers for everything, like at our meeting with the community and whatnot, there's always sort of an answer. And I think sometimes, I think what we need is just more like me, like it's, I appreciate the answers. At the same time, I think some of these questions need to be like brought back to the committee or brought back into explanation and kind of like get back to you on this or get back to the community on this, that, or the other, you know, so that it's not, we don't necessarily need like a direct answer for everything. I think sometimes, I think there just needs to be a presentation of all the information when
Thank
we
you,
come
Liz.
back.
I think Lee had his hand up.
Yeah, two questions. So you put up a slide that showed the trends from each one of the schools. The slide prior to that shows that, and so your trend line actually covers Dondero for a longer period and extrapolates that out. But in the short term, it looked like that was declining, not.
Just the last year. So 24 to 25, there is a slight decline.
So I wanted to point that out. I think the other thing that I was wondering is, have you looked at the number of 2+ bedroom units out of those 275 that actually exist and what the price point of them is? Because it's actually only 75 units out of all of those that has 2+ bedrooms.
Yeah,
And the price points aren't something that's going to be like workable for a family.
I think I agree with you. I think the 292 units in the Dondero catchment area will produce some students.
But not.
I think we're talking in the orders of magnitude 0 to 10.
Yeah.
However, it's 0 to 10 more than are there now, and we have modular classrooms. And so I think you take that with the trends lines that already exist that have showed the last 10 years an increase in that area. And I think you put those together, and I think it's hard to argue. I mean, I would personally will be very surprised over the next 5 to 10 years if we see a net decline in that school. I don't think the data supports that.
Okay.
Yeah.
I would just add that I think, you know, and I totally hear the feedback that like this came out of the blue or this feels very sudden, but as a board member who's been on for 3 years, we had tons of complaints about 20+ person kindergarten classrooms and, you know, these bubble classrooms. And so I think part of the principles is making sure that if the bubble happened, in my mind, that's the most likely thing to continue to happen. So yes, the numbers may look good right now, but I think the risk of waiting to see what those numbers are is that we lose options like grandfathering. We have to make a hard and fast, everyone moves decision. And so I think that's the calculated risk of going with that. We might be fine in these 3 schools next year, but we have some pretty deep concerns and parents have deep concerns about the space utilization and the decisions that are being made about class sizes. Sorry, I trailed off there. Forget that last part.
Well, we won't have options. I think that's the challenge. So we've got right now, the slack that is in the system is sitting at Little Harbor School. And the reason why it's sitting there is the chart that we had up before on the 10-year trends. Little Harbor dropping like a stone in terms of the number of students who are enrolled there. We've made some changes over that period of time, and I wasn't here for all of it, but there's been some whittling of what happened in terms of staffing, but not parallel to the decline of the number of students that have declined over the last 10 years. As a result, you now have this slack that sits in the system, that sits at Little Harbor that doesn't need it. And instead, you've got New Franklin, where I think the other compelling thing that we haven't done yet is just take pictures of where, if you're a kid who's getting intervention at New Franklin, here is the closet with the bath curtain. That is your space. And if you have a de-escalation space, we had side by, and we're gonna do this. We need to do this. But I think people need to see that this is not a theoretical construct of eventually we might have problems in terms of the difference between what is being offered in school. It exists now. And there's slack in the system. So I think there's a moral imperative to take steps that even in the midst of folks being very concerned about transitions for their own students, totally understand and it's appropriate to be concerned about that. I think as a system, we are, there's some courage that we need to have in order to make the right steps in the system. And we can be very thoughtful about individual families. The impact is on individual families. But there are deficiencies in the system because of these types of concerns where the can has been kicked down the road. So now we're in the spot where we have underutilized real estate inside of a building when other buildings need that real estate in order to create a buffer so we don't have these bubble classrooms and we don't have a deficiency in programming.
I think Tish had her hand up and then Lee.
So I just want to get this straight in my head is all of the other components that happen after a decision is made by the board, transportation, budgeting, after school care cannot be addressed properly until a decision by the board is made, correct? So we have to do step 1 to properly answer all of these other concerns, which are priority, I understand, but in my mind, I'm thinking it's almost impossible without having that decision made before the wheels can go into motion to answer these other questions. Is that what I'm understanding?
I think we've gotten some preliminary answers like on the bus or things like that, but some of it is based on just current experience. Like we're contracted for 13 buses and they're only able to provide 12. So if you went to banded schools and you needed 22 buses, the chance that that's feasible is little to none.
Okay.
So some of it is
Somewhat answerable now.
Yeah, somewhat answerable,
Okay.
but I think that part of the piece is that I think there's also a transition plan, kind of community forum opportunity that is the administrators and how this is going to be implemented, what the messaging out to kids, all of those things. And that really shouldn't be at the board level. Like,
No, exactly.
I'm not an elementary educator. I don't have that experience. And that there's some uncertainties, but I have total faith in what we've heard from the administrators that like, they want to know the plan and then they will do the best for their kids, right? And do what's
Absolutely.
necessary.
Okay, thank you.
See,
So I still have, just have two more questions. What happens from a Title I standpoint for New Franklin? If you take a bunch of kids from New Franklin and you stick them into Little Harbor School? The other question that I have is, why was there such a significant decline in attendance at Little Harbor School that made that space in the first place? Is there a correlation to housing prices? What was what
Yeah.
kind of led to?
I think it's two, it's the tail end of New Franklin was through the No Child Left Behind Act Dondero was deemed a school in need of improvement. And at that point, based on things at that time, people who fell within the Dondero catchment area were given an opportunity to make a decision about where to go. So I think there's two factors, which is there's a tail on the end of that choice kind of period that happened. And but we don't have the data in the back of that. I think we look at what the housing costs are in the two different catchment areas and also say, buying a property in the Little Harbor catchment area is beyond most families.
I would venture to say too, that there may be more kids going to private or alternative schools.
I would-
Little Harbor. I think we saw that.
we
You
have-
do have.
we had-
You said you.
But
couldn't
I
find those kids.
I don't know if I have it from the catchment area, but I think I have state level data that could show how many elementary students we're losing to private charter schools. So.
During COVID.
and Byron, if you want.
I think it's super interesting on that particular point, because what the data shows is a steep drop off in the years of during COVID, right? And I think that at Little Harbor specifically, interestingly, is the increase continues at Dondero during that period of time. But my theory would definitely be, it sounds like it would align with what you're thinking, which is during that time, there's a lot of movement to private school, specifically in areas where families can afford to do that. But so, yeah, I think there's some of that intertwined in the Little Harbor trend. I don't think it's the driver of the entire trend, but I think it's definitely a big part of it, yeah.
And Lee, just so you know, the superintendent's office used to be at Little Harbor. So as far as space, the superintendent's office moved to City Hall. So that freed up space there. And so I think that always left a question for me once that happened of, what are we doing with that space?
Well, and it doesn't, that space is now PEEP.
Okay.
PEEP is now.
It's fully
now-
peaked because I thought it was the second floor.
There was the superintendent suite is now the PEEP.
Okay.
And the reason for the move was the introduction
It
of
is-
kindergarten
Yeah.
to the district.
That's fine.
Okay.
But what about
Okay.
that Title I piece? That's the other aspect to it, which I think ties in, it may tie into the after school and the cost difference from a after school programming standpoint, doesn't it?
So the grant that pays for the after school programming is not Title I.
Oh, it's not.
It's
Okay.
it's a 21st century learning grant. Now there's
Title IV.
a variety of different kind of measures to help us become potentially eligible. For Title I is very formula driven. Excuse me, apologize. Very formula driven, combination of folks who qualify directly for programs like free and reduced lunch and other anti-poverty based programs. We then get a number off of that, and then it helps drive how much we get allocated. The 21C grant, 21st Century Learning Grant, that covers the outside, is one we apply for, and it's competitive. And so we actually our grant in 2022 was running out in the 22-23 was the last year of the
Yep.
5-year grant.
Yep.
That covered MC3. We then applied and did not receive the funding in that next summer. So last year, we actually used some ESSER funds to help offset the cost because we got out very late and we would have had to turn around to families and be like, good luck, you gotta figure out your stuff. So we offset that with ESSER funds. Then went back through the application process this time and got a grant. Did quite well. That's a real tribute to the work of our director of that program. And received those funds, and now we're locked into another multi-year period of time where we'll have that funding, and it will dissipate over time. And then we'll be back where potentially we're applying for those funds. Now, it doesn't hurt us in that application process that MC3 is a program that is jointly administrated between us and the Portsmouth Housing Authority. And at one time, I think was stationed at Boston, one time. We still partner, but of course, most of the activities now at Franklin School. So there is a connection. There's always a possibility anytime we have shifting populations that we could at some point down the road become ineligible for Title I funding, or we probably wouldn't lose all our Title I funding. What would happen is we would move from a school-wide program, which New Franklin is now, which allows us to say, okay, there's enough of a concentration of poverty based on, this is actually based on a measurement from years ago, it's not even recent, that allow us to then access Title I funds, and then we're able to provide, we can provide enrichment materials that can go towards training, can go towards personnel, but those personnel are allowed to address the needs of all students in the building who may or may not, who may struggle. Where once we get into, if that changes over time, like I said, I think the step back we would take is not from Title I to no Title I, and be Title I to target Title I, which is what Dondero has, where anything that we pay for with those federal funds has to be used almost exclusively for students who are identified within the free and reduced lunch category or from that. So that's the difference, and that's the thing that could change. But right now, the percentage of the population at New Franklin is not as big as some other schools that would necessarily qualify for already for school-wide programming, but we just haven't been caught up in that kind of sweep from the state. So it's always kind of year to year, we're wondering, how long it will be able to maintain those funds, independent of anything that we do with moving any students around.
Byron, thank you, Lee.
Yeah, I just, on the subject of sort of like on the Title I, so one of the things that we had gotten some feedback around is interest in what the effect of the socioeconomic neighborhood makeup of the schools is going to be relative to the changes that we're making. I just wanted to be like totally transparent in terms of we don't have a great measure for that. The measure that we do have is percentage of kids in each school that are on free and reduced lunch. There are essentially 4 communities in the city of Portsmouth that are drivers of big drivers in terms of percentages. And 2 of them currently go to Little Harbor, 1 goes to New Franklin, and 1 goes to Dondero. In our endless exercises of moving neighborhoods around to see sort of like around that specific metric to see like how those things would respond, the current configuration is the most fair in terms of percentages, right? And so we had talked about moving Osprey to New Franklin, right? And doing some other configurations. None of those improved the current makeup.
By
But-
current, do you mean that or where people are today?
Where people are today.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. Yeah, so again, to rephrase, yeah, like the current ratios are the most, essentially the most fair. By moving the 2 neighborhoods from Dondero to Little Harbor, the percentage of free and reduced lunch at Dondero increases by 1%. So from 12% to 13%. And by moving the 1 neighborhood from New Franklin, the Powder House neighborhood, the free and reduced lunch ratio at Little Harbor goes up by 1%. So there is a marginal change in terms of that specific number. But if we're taking the approach of moving neighborhoods as a way to solve this problem, that is the most optimal choice. Moving those other neighborhoods only produces more inequity in the system. And I just wanted to call that out because it's something that I think we spent a lot of time on. We haven't talked a lot about, particularly because it's a difficult thing to talk about. It's difficult to talk about those neighborhoods in that kind of way. I'm not particularly comfortable doing that. But I think it's important that we do call that out because it's something we spent a good amount of time on. And I just want to be transparent about like what the net on those numbers are as part of this move.
Okay, are we all set? Oh, Pip and Lisa.
And I'm beginning to understand this a lot better, so I appreciate all this extra information and the data. It's very helpful to see. I feel like though I still haven't really heard like a compelling argument for why this has to happen right now. And I know that it will have to happen, whatever year we do it, it has to happen before the budget season. That makes a lot of sense, but that's, for me, that's just still missing, so I don't know, maybe I'll still hear that. But I guess I want to understand, from the committee, you're hearing a lot from the public, like, please slow down. And as I said, as a board member, I'm not convinced we need to move as quickly as we are either. So what are we doing? What is the committee doing to respond to, for instance, the memorandum that we were sent by 200?
Yeah, I think it's the best answer I can give is that my attempt at the fact sheet was I did my best to line by line go through the memorandum of the specific asks and produce that document as a way of trying to listen to
With
that
the committee's input.
with the committee.
Byron led that,
Sorry.
but we were all,
Yeah.
no, you.
Yeah. With the committee's input. And in terms of the speed, I think there's been my take from the 575 respondents was a majority looking for 25, 26. So that to me is an input, the largest input and the strongest input of the community around timing.
I also think that the symptom of having a modular is that it could have been done sooner, or it might have been done sooner, you know, so I like, we cannot project, this is how many, you know, within 1 to 2 student accuracy, what it's gonna be. And, you know, enrollments are gonna happen through September next year, you know, and so it's really the question of, you know, if I'm in a neighborhood that is being redistricted, and I want my family to stay. I understand that for advocacy for my family, but I may be making the decision for you that now your child's in a 24-person class. And so I think that those are the things that come out in the survey responses. And that, you know, with more time, I think everyone should review them and kind of digest them. But we're hearing a lot of slow down. We're also hearing, why didn't you do this sooner? And this is long overdue. So, I mean, I see both sides of that.
So, but but you're not anticipating that a bubble next year, or that we'll need the modular.
The bubble, we didn't know about till August. So there's no way for us to say enrollments kept coming in daily at Dondero that year for kindergarten to where it was over it was like 65 students in kindergarten and only 3 classrooms. And so part of it was that there's just not that flexibility because a lot of families are moving to rentals, which are primarily in Dondero's catchment within our city. And they're not starting till August 1st lease or September 1st lease. And so they're not registering until they're in the area.
So that makes sense. And then it seems like I know there were several proposals in the beginning, scenarios proposed, and now it seems like you've narrowed it down to one. Is that correct?
I think there's, yeah, I mean, my take would be, I think, we have 2 neighborhoods that I think fairly strong about. I think we're trying to understand still, the impact of all three neighborhoods were they to move. The long-term impact on just making sure, because we're trying to be equitable in terms of the slack, right? So we want to overcorrect. So I think there's some deliberation at the committee level around like, making sure that we don't overcorrect. What does the transition time look like? I mean, if we have a 5-year, this is, a thought experiment, we have a 5-year transitioning plan and Powder House is redistricted and no one from Powder House chooses to move to Little Harbor next year. And then, but that the lease on that time runs out. So 5 years down the line, we have a total population move. Like, is the population decline in Little Harbor such that the slack in the system is like where we want to be? We're never going to get perfect on that, right? That's like a very difficult thing to, I mean, there's just the size of the data is not such that you can get perfect like that. But yeah, I think that's something that's, but yeah, the 3 neighborhoods is sort of where we're targeting right now.
Okay, and I know this has been a long conversation already, but could you just say briefly how you arrived at that scenario right now? Like why those 3 neighborhoods?
Sure. So I would say, so the 2 neighborhoods from Dondera, Little Harbor and Hillside are within, half of Lafayette Park is within less than a mile to Little Harbor. So there's been, community support in the neighborhood, especially during the time when there was no modulars and there's over 20-person classrooms to redistrict to Little Harbor. And then the Powder House neighborhood is just literally geographically the closest one to Little Harbor that would provide the number of students that would sort of match what we're looking for in terms of being able to have the slack in the system be correct. So I think to say it simply, the ones that are closest to Little Harbor.
Yeah, at least one of those being a New Franklin.
Yeah.
Because of the existing space concerns in New Franklin, at least we need it.
And I think the other piece is the proximity to the other 2, just because of bus costs and our bus availability. So we think we could push for, like, we can't have 1, 2, 3 neighborhoods and not have a huge impact on the busing budget. And we just don't think those buses are available.
Thank you.
Okay, Lisa, and then Noah, Nathan, and then why don't we sum this up so we can move on?
Okay, so I think that some of my questions have been asked and answered, so I'm gonna not do that all again. I think I just have some big picture questions with this at this point, and it would be helpful before we have to vote on a final plan at the board level for me to understand that a bit better. I really appreciated, Zach, what you were saying in terms of just the really inequitable use of space, particularly for special education services. I've certainly seen that. I had a child who benefited from that massive room for OT and it was great. And I had that same kid in a different school district in the closet and that was not great. So I think that as a district, having those spaces be as equitable as possible for all of our kids is a really fantastic goal. But I'd like to understand better how we're achieving that, because I feel like we have sort of one set of concerns around having the class size be equitable, which is a fair question, but I don't have a good sense of once we sort of reallocate that slack at Little Harbor, what's going to change with services at Little Harbor, which I think is, not to tell people how they should change everything, but just to know how they're envisioning it so that we can understand that when we're making a vote. And then what is that practically going to improve at New Franklin or at John Darrow? Because I just don't have an easy time wrapping my head around that, knowing physically how those spaces are and having been inside all 3 of the buildings. I just don't know by sort of filling the classrooms at Little Harbor, we might get maybe 1 extra space at each of those other schools. Like, it's just hard for me to understand if we're talking about trying to make an entire kindergarten class disappear at one school and appear in another school by redistricting so that we have an empty room for OT, PT, speech, whatever, or if we're trying to create space so everybody has the same amount of room for music or whatever it is, I would just like to understand how that's gonna work, because I can't wrap my brain around it. And I'm sure there is a plan, I just don't get it.
I think what makes that, challenging to answer is if grandfathering is a key part of what folks want to see in the proposal. It becomes very difficult to, in the short run, we're not gonna be able to answer that question. Because
Fair.
It's gonna be based on choices of families.
Yeah,
So we'll be creating what we think is reasonably designed to create more equitable space, which will lead to more equitable programming, based on the information that's available to us. But that's way easier to project from just, if we're saying there is no grandfathering, we're moving all those people over here. But I think we've heard very, strongly in the, from folks who have come out in the survey work, that there's a desire for at least people who are in there right now to be grandfathered. So if we do that, we lose our ability to control some of those other variables. I would hate, though, to then say, well, if we can't control for those other variables, then we're just not gonna deal with that issue at all. And we'll wait till some other time down the road when we can address it.
yeah, and I think that's a really fair concern. I guess I would think if our hope with grandfathering is that we're casting out 5 or 10 years. And then that's the intention at that point, to have a dramatically different allocation of space and a different way of kids having more equal access to things. It would just like, I would like to understand what that vision is a little better.
Sure.
And maybe you don't know when you're going to do it. Maybe it's only a certain number of years if we don't grandfather, but it's a longer time horizon if we do. But just having a better idea of what that means. And I'm also kind of having a hard time understanding if we're talking about moving staff. Like, because we maybe are trying to create more classrooms of kids in one space, which might mean moving people. So I'd like to know what that looks like. And then I'm also just sort of thinking about our strategic plan and how much we have spent so much time talking about wanting to support, students having a real sense of community and connection and having a trusted adult in every building. And I care about that. And I know that we do in our schools. So I'd like to have some idea of what's the vision for how we maintain that for the families that we're moving. Because I think we probably can find a way to do that, but I don't know what the plan is.
Sure.
So I don't think it's my decision how
Yeah.
that's done,
Yeah.
but if I'm voting to redistrict, it has all these spillover implications. And I'd like to know before we're voting at least what the broad strokes are. And I guess the last thing I'd say is, when we did the strategic plan, I found it extremely beneficial to be able to have a dialogue with our principals and really understand from their perspective why the plan that we're approving makes sense to them, why it matters, why they want it to happen, and how they're going to do it. And I would really like to have that opportunity to hear from them directly. As board members, we can listen to the committee, but we can't talk because that's not how it's set up, and that's totally fair. But I just feel like for the benefit of us making a more informed decision, I would like to see that happen before we vote.
Thank you, Lisa. Nathan.
I know it's been a long conversation, so I'll try and keep it quick, but I know, Carrie, you touched on it a little bit, and I try and look at this idea of redistricting very straightforward and anecdotally. And I think that when I came on 2-ish years ago, we were like, yeah, that 4th grade class is sort of big. And then last year, come August, we had a lot more applicants and now we have to put the modulars in. But that really turned into getting a lot of flack from city council. And it was also very hard for us as a board to make that happen. And there was no real sense of urgency till we actually realized that we needed them. And I think that this whole idea of, 2025, 2026, we may not see a rise, but after that, what happens? And that to me is what reinforces this idea of why we need to redistrict, because I think it can play out the same as these modular classrooms at Dondero. So that's just my view.
Thank you.
I have one thing.
Oh, do you want to say something?
Sorry, I just wanted to show, well, first of all, I'd like to recommend, we have a student representative on our redistricting committee as third co-chair. But if that doesn't happen,
One of the kids from the cookie election.
yeah. So the one thing I wanted, and this will just be posted, it's. See how I can. This is a 40-page export. Is there any way that can be bigger on this or not?
I think if you hit the magnify on your screen. There you go,
My whole screen though. Anyway, okay. Well, I will,
right there.
so just as sort of an orientation, when you look at this, what best describes your family, each of these that has a bar graph then has a data table under it. So 2 questions are grouped together. Because of the nature, like I couldn't manually analyze this, I had to do it through the survey program, which is why it all looks like this. But I think one just interesting thing to point out is that we're able to capture over 180 families that have yet to enroll their kids or have kids to enroll still, which helps us do some of those estimations better, or it's so far the best source of data we have. And then I want to just go, sorry, it's being super slow. I just want to explain stacked bar graphs. I know, so exciting. But this was the best visualization that I could have that would generate a report.
Hit your green dot at the top of your screen. That'll blow your window wide open. There you go.
It's still not, I want it bigger,
As
Patty.
big as it gets. I can't make
No,
it
that's
any
your
bigger.
screen.
Big as it gets.
Okay.
Oh.
So, there's a lot of, we used a lot of ranked choice options in the survey. So they're color coded for first, second, third, fourth, and fifth choice. They're organized then by the most frequent first choice. So these are just redistricting options. So in this one, there was 5 options. So essentially, if you add 34 and 21 together, 55% prioritized either as first or second that students and their siblings would complete. Any questions on how those? Okay, there's lots of text. One more, and then I'll be.
I have a question about the survey.
Yeah.
So I think it came up maybe in comments too, but I think a lot of the options for grandfathering was like, keeping the kid that's there, keeping the kid and the sibling, and those were the types of questions, but it wasn't like, hey, if we give you like these options as far as a support package when your child transitions, would you be willing to transition type of thing? So I guess I'm wondering if moving forward, with the fact that Zach's telling us right now, if we do this grandfathering, we're not going to see we likely might not see any type of shift. And then we're hearing that maybe we need to have a shift in students going to Little Harbor. Is there a way, and maybe this is a committee question, a follow-up, but like to ask a more targeted question about grandfathering and, would families in those areas that may be affected, would they consider making the move? Should they have certain supports in place or some sort of transition plan or like extra added, care packages, different, whatever could be the thing,
The survey options were designed around the suggestions from the community so far. I think there's always been an assumption that there will be a transition plan, but I think that's beyond the scope of this. And I don't think, every survey I've written, I have a million, like, I wish I had, right? And that would be great. But I think we don't want to overlook the really important data that is here that we do have to look at. So this last one, I just want to show you, because there were so many factors and principles and important things that had come out, we asked folks to select 5 factors that they think are most important in redistricting. So each of these represents a choice. Folks chose 5. So then once we get down to, oh goodness, We have all the text. And just, I know I sent this out to the board members. If you are looking at this and you see any identifying data within the narrative responses, I had only found one and I redacted it, so please let me know before it gets posted publicly. And so then in this one, you have the same stacked bar graphs, but because not everyone, they only responded to and ranked the 5 options that they had. That is why the bars are different. Any questions?
Are you gonna post this for us in the public?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, and we can do that
So
pretty
you
quick
can-
on the,
We can digest.
well, it'll be in the minutes, but then we can break it up pretty quickly on the website. I think we just need to do one more. Check for the 5 stuff. Just to make sure, we don't wanna, when people are told it was some of the, you know. We don't wanna put someone out there that.
Okay, let's have one last question. Pip? Oh, and Brian. Brian.
I
this is
don't-
what-
Nancy, I had my hand up too.
I think you've spoken enough, Liz.
No,
We
but
need to- we need to-
everybody else had a second
end the
round. I had a
discussion.
question about the units that I want to ask.
Okay, all right.
Mine is not a question. I just wanted to say that I would very much support the idea of having the opportunity to speak with the principals. So if we are able to put this vote off to January, we can find, or we can invite them to our next meeting or something, that would be wonderful. I found it hard listening into the last meeting to really understand. Well, I couldn't see them on the Zoom and then to understand exactly what they were saying, or it was a bit difficult. So to be able to ask them some questions and stuff would be, if we had the whole committee here, that would be ideal.
Thank you, Pip. Well, Brian.
I think one great thing is when we start narrowing down the funnel here, and it sounds like we're getting close to doing that, is you could do a much more targeted, like, okay, what are you gonna do? And then what are you gonna do? And what are you gonna do? Because it'd be nice to actually see how it's gonna kind of play out. Like, I'm gonna keep my kid here and, you know, my 5th grader will stay here, my 3rd grader will stay here. And then, you know, that 3rd grader will be out by, you know, 3 years. So that'd be actually interesting to see, because then it makes a plan sort of kind of see where those you know, when availability would start to pop up. But I think you could narrow it down even before like a vote. You could do something.
We
You're not gonna get
Already built
everybody.
some of that in.
Yeah.
do have that in the survey.
We have a lot of them with that.
And so it can give us initial numbers on that, but that just requires more analysis and geocoding the addresses first, so that couldn't happen today, but
Okay, good.
I think we'll have that soon. I think Byron did manually go through it. And that's from the 3 neighborhoods we're currently talking about, there's one that has about 30 to 40 students that would move, and that's, I'm gonna bet, almost spot on. The other neighborhoods are not interested in moving immediately. But again, need to do the analysis and get back to you.
Okay, I think we're gonna end this discussion.
Nancy.
Liz, this discussion is now over.
But everybody else had another turn and we haven't talked about the
Yeah,
units.
A lot of turns.
I'm,
Okay.
okay,
All right,
Zach, I would
Liz,
just ask that with the
moving on.
units, if
Liz,
with
we're
the
moving
budget, we
on.
can figure
Liz,
out what we're.
Please be quiet.
Eh.
Okay, thank you everyone for all your contributions to the discussion of redistricting. Again, we thank our committee, Byron and Kerry, and all the input that Zach has had, and our principals. It's a lot of work and it's a tough road forward to have to follow, but we're on a good mission here, so thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, we're gonna move on in the agenda. The next item is the superintendent's report. School year memo and calendar.
So, you have, the proposed calendar for 25-26. Included in the memo, just a little bit of information around, you know, some of the framework, around this, how this goes, your board policy. The process that we go through, which is, through our collective bargaining agreement, we actually have language that says that the Association of Portsmouth Teachers, APT, will develop a calendar that gets done, that gets submitted to me. A lot of that is, and APT will talk about this, it's really just Libby Needham, who's a 4th grade teacher at New Franklin, does a bunch of work to make sure that we're taking care of holidays, we get the right count and the number of days, and that we basically reflect what we've done in previous years, for the most part. I would say that what's important is that both the association and the administration have been talking over the course of the last year or so about the fact that the year is getting long, because of, well, that's really because of what's happened in regards to elections. Our approach continues to be, and I think it is the right approach, that as long as polling stations are places where, based on current New Hampshire law, it is unclear, it is, New Hampshire federal law says that schools are gun-free zones, and New Hampshire law says you can potentially bring your gun to a polling station. While that continues to be the case, you know, I think my position continues to be the same, which is that we should not be having students on grounds during that period of time. However, the conversation I've had with APT is a willingness and openness, and I think the administration agrees with this too, is let's start targeting some of those election days for professional development time. And so in this, we only have in this particular calendar, I think there was one municipal election day. And we would use that day as a teacher workshop / professional development.
Just a question with that. Would you have it? Would faculty be where the voting is, or would they be in another school
I
where?
think the conversation I had with the APT is, excuse me, conversation I had with APT, I think there hasn't been a push to say, let's only use training space that would be not your regular build. Like, there hasn't been a push necessarily from teachers saying, we don't want to be in a building where voting's happening. So right now, this is, that conversation. I didn't ask them for like an affirmative, like, you guys are you fine with me saying we use whatever space appropriate? I think we want to be thoughtful about that regardless. I mean, the safety of our students and the safety of our staff.
100%.
But there wasn't an expectation or a precondition that we would only use exclusively buildings that did not have voting, because for the most part, in a general election time, it's almost all of our buildings. In this case, it was only Dondero that wasn't utilized. In a normal period, not presidential general election, high school would not be utilized, but our other buildings.
Right.
And so, so I think there'd be the possibility of, in some cases, using the high school as a place where we can do some of our training. But that hasn't necessarily been a precondition of the conversation I've had with the Teachers Association.
I wonder if we could ask the city to not have voting in our schools.
So
Is that a possibility?
when new guy rolled into town and started to posit that maybe that would be something we should consider in light of what the governor had put out in relation to firearms. The city was less than receptive to new guy's suggestion that maybe we should find alternatives. So I don't, and in their defense, I don't think that there aren't tons. I mean, we do use the facility, the senior center, which got used during this last wave. But there's not a lot of municipal facilities that are not us that are well designed for the purposes of voting. So I am, as much as I say in jest, that I did, start to have that conversation that was not well received. In their defense, I don't know totally where all voters would go. I also think they worry about confusing, we have a ward system, and having voters within a ward know where they're supposed to be, have consistency and tradition in that, and wanting to make sure that they have the best voter turnouts we possibly can, so we have a rich and vibrant democracy. I think that's all things that are trying to weigh at the same time. But yes, I
think it's something we should look into.
Agreed.
Let's do that. Yes, Carrie.
I know that we did receive communication about this calendar, and I think that we had heard previously also the idea of not having lots of 4-day weeks or things like that.
Yep.
The one thing that I feel concerned about as a parent is the 2 October and January days, that have 2 3-day weeks is super challenging. And it would make a big difference if those teacher workshops can happen on the preceding and have a 4-day weekend would be much better for childcare. As much as we have talked about MC3 being the best after school program ever, we do not have coverage for teacher workshop days where Peak does. And so I think just specifically for New Franklin families, that's probably the most challenging as that's not offered. So
Yeah, and Patty, help me out. So the 17th of October was about it was two things. It was trying to hit the right time for K-5 conferences.
Yep.
In terms of actually having completed enough.
Yep.
To be in a position to have a meaningful conversation with families at an appropriate time.
Yep.
And the other is, in terms of like, if you take that and you move it to the 10th.
Mhm.
We have a little bit of concern sometimes about that being about making sure that we're gonna have real strong staff turnout. Because you create
4-day weekends for them too.
4-day weekends that can become. Yeah, so that's a concern on the administrative side. About to what extent we'll have really strong turn.
I think it would just, as I know, there's bigger things with rec and after school programs and stuff, but even just on your radar that covering those teachers work, getting rec to support programs around those days would be hugely helpful. And then just one quick typo on February,
Only me.
it should be 23 to 27.
Thank you.
It's a 1-day vacation.
Well, yeah. Real short.
We're all about work around
That
here.
year.
Any other comments about the school calendar?
Quick comment and one question.
Yes.
I do agree, this has come up for me before, and I know for a lot of other parents that work of trying to juggle those 3 and 4-day weeks and childcare. I definitely think we should push harder on rec and the city, especially if they are making us close our schools on election day. Great, then how about we have rec run a program that is open to all of our K-5 kids that day somewhere else,
Great.
hypothetically.
But I may have just seen.
I know.
Looking at. That's an interesting.
And the other thing that I do think has come up on the flip side of that I've heard from a lot of administrators and teachers is just that for our students that have food insecurity or don't have like great family structure at home, having like the 4-day weekends can be sometimes challenging for those students. So I have heard before that we sometimes intentionally try to stagger that for that reason. So I
there's
just
some truth to
want
that,
to
too.
keep that in the mix.
What snow days are we gonna have this year?
Well, if it's, with the
No.
climate stuff, you'd say not many, but, I don't know what Farmer's Almanac is saying.
Yeah. How many heat days?
Well, and that's more likely,
7 days, right?
that's more likely to be what it's
Rain.
gonna be. That's what, I think as much as snow days, it's like, do we get some ice? Ice will be bigger impact for us. than snow.
And when are we voting on this to finalize it?
Whenever folks are ready to finalize it, because then we could, at that point, we have the ability to put it out put it up and have it up early and
Gotta book my
have parents be able to
vacations.
plan. Yep.
Shall we put it on the next agenda?
Unless you're willing to take care of today.
Oh,
It's done and we just put it up.
how do people feel about that? Are you comfortable voting on it now?
I would like to have another meeting just to be able to gather more input, just if there's other unforeseen things that come up. But December sounds great.
Okay, we'll put it on for December.
Okay.
Okay, let's move on to the email summary. Do you want to, well, it's still in your report.
Well, those are all, you have it, 23 redistricting, one inquiry to the board around from interim around book challenges. I got back to the person. And then conversation and then a suggestion around elementary playgrounds. So I think the board's has seen those emails. And then just a notification of an overnight field trip for the Model UN group going to Boston through Social Studies Department and High School Association. Again,
I'd be willing to chaperone that if they.
Yeah, it's a
need
good,
help.
it's a cool group.
Yeah.
That is also the trip, I think, that we had the bus fire on.
Oh, yeah.
last-
Yes, that was it.
That was the bus fire. This young texting me and like, I think the opening text was, just to start, everything's okay. Right.
That's a good way to start.
Can't wait to find out what's coming after. So, yeah.
Okay, thank you, Zach. Now we'll go to the administrator report, the financial memo.
You'll see in your backup, the
Thank you, Brian.
well-awaited, super exciting. financial report we get every month. It's out a little early because we are not meeting, I guess, later this month, so we got out a little bit early. This month, you'll see a revenue report that's also added in there. I'm having a hard time deciphering how or determining how I want to present it. Because revenue is presented much differently than expenditures. It's almost reverse. So I'm gonna work on that, gonna try to clean this up. And make it a little bit nicer, but as far as I can see, everything is going well. Nothing is out of the ordinary. Expenses are in line as we speak. We're only 2 months into this, financially, we're only for this report, you're 2 months into the school year. So nothing is really out of alignment.
Okay, any questions for Brian?
I'm just excited by the revenue reports.
Never seen it before. It's
I've
actually-
just never seen it before and it's exciting. What's the, is the LEA one local, is that,
That's
SU 50?
Yep.
Okay, I assumed. And then, where, I'm just curious, like out of district tuition, that's not SAU 50?
That would be somebody who is needing to have their students come here, but that is not SE 50, for example. We've had families that are either moving to the district
Yeah.
or and they're
Moved out.
Just a handful.
Yeah, and they're,
Less
yeah,
than me.
yeah, it's very, very small.
Less than
So they
six.
come in and they're like, all right, I'm gonna tuition until my house is either purchased or built or.
Where
We
does
also have
that,
some- We also have some that are just, oh, where does that appear in the revenue?
yeah.
Oh, that's That's big.
Or on the,
Again, there's some lines I've got to take out of here.
it right at the top? 13.
Oh, I'm sorry, yes, tuition local right there, 1311.
oh, you're coding, you're using those numbers. Okay,
I'll live in the accounting world, so everything's. Number.
So, yeah. it's-
yeah, I think once.
We have $9,258 so far this year brought in for local tuition, which is very, very small. Matter of fact, there's nothing even budgeted from last year when they did this budget because it's such a small amount.
Yeah, I think whatever the reporting ends up being, or it would be great just to have like a little orientation to this, to the revenue part.
And I gotta clean some of these lines are never gonna be used either. If they had basic cut paste that put it here because I had to get it done quickly for this month. The next month I'll have more time. So.
Okay,
Thank you for this.
Brian, can you give us just a brief summary of the CIP?
Super exciting. That right there.
How many questions? I would say I felt really guilty. Walking up the back door, right as questions were starting. So
I thought I was gonna make it through without having to get up in front of everything, but the very, very last question, but after public comment, my counselor was about the playgrounds.
Yeah.
And so I went up and got the nod from Karen and things in the both there. Between me and Peter, it was fine.
Okay.
It was just prioritizing why we can't do it now versus later. You know, why Little Harbor takes a little bit longer, because Little Harbor has more challenges.
Yeah.
As far as the design, there's water runoff, there's wetlands, there's.
All kinds of-
We have to move from one side of the building to the other,
You talked about the playground.
so otherwise, went pretty well, there's 85 projects, 84 projects in the city, and we're only about. There's some really great ideas, some good feedback, good questions by city councilors. Playgrounds were supported. I see how that goes.
Oh, I love that.
Gate smoke.
I think your assessment of what's exciting to us is totally off.
Yeah.
Hard time reading the rooms sometimes.
Revenue report.
Well, let's hope, I really think we need to be thankful to the city for the cooperation we get from them, especially look at Lister Academy, the community campus. This project that hopefully really wasn't on their radar, and it looks like that's gonna be approved, and the cooperation we get from the police when you need the assistance.
Okay.
You know, that doesn't happen in many communities. The police will just say, school department, you take care of, your problems, So I think we should be really thankful to our city for us. So if you can think of anything else we should ask them for, let us know.
We're really thankful. Now we have more requests.
It's a roof issue at New Franklin that I'm hearing about in the survey. But I think that's on the CIP already.
Playground maintenance.
Oh, the playground maintenance. Well, that's in our budget. Well, we'll
So
talk about
that's-
that
yeah,
at
that
budget
one
time.
knows
We'll
in-
talk about that at
we
budget.
have a
time.
line that covers
Mhm.
Yes,
that
we do.
already, and it's not exclusively for playground, but Kenny has a line that includes those types of projects, so they projected. So, but when we get to the budget
We'll-
season,
we'll
we'll
talk
talk more about that.
Okay, let's move on. Thank you, everyone, to consideration and acceptance of the 2024 Coachia and Sarah Award for Excellence and Innovation in the Teaching of Italian in K through 12.
So really quickly, this is, so just in terms of framing the gift coming to you in the decision-making process, if you remember, in May of last year, we updated our policy. And so basically the way this works in terms of acceptance of gifts is I can accept on your behalf gifts up to $1,000 or less. And we went through this with our test case immediately after we passed this was the Kelly Clarkson step, the Darn Art Department. Regularly on fifty money. So I can accept gifts up to 1,000 on your behalf. Then gifts between 1,000 and 20,000, you put on your agenda. You have a conversation like we're gonna have, and come to a conclusion as to whether I get accepted. Anything over 20,000, you have to build in a public hearing as part of your process, which would give the public an opportunity to come in and discuss whether or not they think you should accept. So this is for 5,000, so it sits in that second tier category. This is awarded to Joseph Marquette for his contributions to the teaching of Italian, the innovation of how to teach Italian in a K-12 setting. And I think you saw in the letter, it breaks out into two different parts, $2,500 that would go towards the enriched materials for his class, and then $2,500 that he can use towards an accredited institution to further build on his skill set.
Do we have a motion to accept this award?
Second.
Do we have a second? Any discussion?
Just want to say, a personal anecdote, like my son's been taking Italian from a gentleman, he's been having absolutely wonderful time. So I'm super appreciative. I'm glad to see the recognition. And little known fact, it's my last name, Matto, which was shortened when my family immigrated here, is an Italian phrase for crazy person. And so when we visited,
That's why.
yeah, when we visited the
The redistricting committee.
yeah. When we visited there, when we visited Italy this last summer, there were often embarrassment on the faces of the people, the concierges. Oh, Mr. Matto. So anyway. But yeah, I think it's fantastic, and just anecdotally, my son's having a great year with the Marquette. So yeah.
Thank you. Any other comments? Do we have to have a roll call?
Nope.
All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Motion passes. Thank you. Okay, the next one is the Rotary Club Little Harbor Trees in memory of Basil and Louise Richard.
And this is more just a notification, if you have the memo, from the city manager's office to me, just in terms of, this is, something that Rotary wanted to do to honor Basil Louise Richardson, the trees have already been planted and this would be. Putting a plaque on the air, some of those trees are planted around the area. So. I think because. I'll be honest, and I don't know procedurally if I need a vote on this or not, but I would say because I don't know that, I encourage you to take a vote to just to kind of confirm that you're open to doing so. You try to make sure I was clear.
Okay, do we have a motion to accept the recommendation of the city manager and Zach to place a plaque at Little Harbor School where the trees are, which were planted, I believe it was with Portsmouth 400 anniversary and the Rotary Club, in honor of Basil and Louise Richardson.
Motion to approve.
Any discussion? I just want to say, as a Rotarian, I've known Basil for many, many years, and he was quite a character if anyone knew him, and a tremendous, tremendous contributor to our community. So I think this is a really nice honor for he and his wife. He recently passed away. And if you ever go to Richardson's Market on State Street downtown, his daughter now runs it. So
I just remember the old days when he was in the back, cigar in mouth, carving meat.
Smoked meat.
That's it.
Smoked meat.
He was smoked meat.
Sounds good.
okay, all in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Thank you, everyone. Committee updates. We have the redistricting committee minutes, which are posted. And thank you for establishing the page for everyone. I know you worked hard on it, but Byron and Terry have been working hard to update it. So, and you will let us know when the next community meeting is, correct?
Yeah, we'll
Okay.
communicate that out. I think we should have a
Hopefully
future-
we walk out tomorrow, the date.
Yeah, hopefully tomorrow, yeah, we'll have a date for that, and then I think we should have in December. Redistricting on the agenda again, I'm sure it'll be a point of discussion. I don't know if we'll have a final recommendation at that point, but certainly coming out of the community meeting, I think we'll have things to talk about.
So we'll be sure it's on the.
Yep.
Obviously. So yes,
We don't have another meeting.
no, not until December 11th or 10th, whatever, it's December 10th. Okay.
And we just have the one in December, right, because in the holidays.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, we have two in April. We added one in April, if you remember, because we took one out in November. Okay.
And then January, we get hit with lots of meetings.
Okay,
I just have one question on
Yes.
committee updates. It would be super helpful, like I understand the timing of this survey didn't really make it feasible to get anything in the packet, but for the next meeting, especially if the meeting is, this week, if we can have and the public can see what's going to be presented at the meeting in the packet so that people who want to comment and weigh in can.
I think there's a real
Time.
discussion to.
Oh, no, I mean, tonight I get it.
I was
That
gonna say,
was
but
last
in advance,
minute.
there was a discussion,
trying to-
is it appropriate to talk about it because it's stuff in the packet, and I think the decision was, let's get it out there.
No, totally.
So.
Yeah, we can definitely work on, I think it's well received. Thank you.
Thank you.
okay, future agenda requests. There weren't any on the Google form that we put together, no additional ones.
No,
There are new ones?
no.
No, there were no new ones.
So
Okay,
are we
regarding the
Scheduling
request
any of the old
for,
ones?
yeah, regarding the request for the advanced placement, we're gonna do that in January. We're gonna have a discussion with the high school print. That was your request. that
Yeah,
we
no, I was just thinking about timing in January.
Well, we're putting it on the agenda in January.
Okay. I think my only question with that, would we know what's planned for the program of studies for next year at the high school in January? Because I'd want to know that. I wouldn't want to have that discussion in January and then be like, surprise, we've changed what we're doing for the next year in February. I don't think that would be the case, but I
No.
might just check in the scheduling.
Okay, we'll check on it, but.
Thank you.
it appears that won't happen. Okay, reopening public comment. That's only for people that are present. There's no one here, so we don't have to open the public comment. Okay, do we have anything else? Anybody?
I do
Yes.
want to bring up, this is our last meeting before the Christmas parade. Who's in it? Who's in on it?
I would love to, however, I'm double booked at Nutcracker and,
You
and,
in Boston, the Nutcracker?
no, my daughter's in the Nutcracker at,
Oh.
Fritz this year. It's very exciting for us.
date is?
It's the
December
first
7th.
I put out a thing to staff. So
7th.
everybody better not nail.
And it's ugly sweater. We needed
It
a
has
theme.
encouragement.
It's ugly
If they
sweater.
carry Kids, get out there. So.
My wife has knit the ugliest sweater for me too. Like, no, that's not, it was intentional. Very much intentionally. For that purpose.
But let's not just have like three
Spot
people
on, you're
show
right.
up. Well, and I'll be there. And like I said, my husband said, as long as it's not raining, he'll put the convertible there. I got little magnet lights to put on there so it's shiny.
Can I drive the car?
No.
That's up to him. That's up to him.
So there is an official ugly sweater theme?
If everyone's,
Or we just. would
I
do
think
that?
it should be
That
an
would be
official
like our
ugly
group.
sweater. That's what
Okay.
I think we need.
Got an argument here.
Theme. You gotta decorate a coat ugly then.
Okay, so
What time?
whatever.
That's-
Yeah, blinking one. Okay,
Go
I
to,
get it.
go to Goodwill, get a coat, get some ugly garland. I got hot glue
It's
gun if
that-
anyone wants to come over and do a craft day at my house.
Yeah,
We can do that.
if you do that, I'll be there.
Yeah, oh yeah.
I can double check for you.
Transition right
I'm just wondering, because I gotta get on a flight on Sunday.
I'll have the bar card.
Well, I just sit at home and go through Pinterest and my mind just. To be honest.
Okay, we will get, I don't have the information yet of what street we're supposed to meet on, you know, how they give you this. So as
It's,
soon as
I think it's at Mark, Mark,
5:30, the parade stops at 6.
Pick and pay, we started.
Pick and Pay, thank you.
No,
The
but
wife,
you
local.
where you are in the
Oh,
parade.
where'd that
They
come
put
from?
one on Side Street.
Poser.
Side Street.
Poser
If
like
you want the
a-
side I know nothing about, but I
Like
do
4 or
think
5
we should
sides.
give like candy canes or something out too.
You can hand it to people.
You can hand it, you
throw
can't throw it.
You can't throw it, but you can hand it to people. Okay, well, that sounds like fun. Please bring your kids, bring the whole family. It's a lot of fun. Okay,
Wait, how many people are in? Because before we make another pitch to staff, I wanna make sure.
I'm in,
All right.
I'm in.
and I
I
will
mean-
host a craft night at my house.
Yeah.
If people
Come on,
wanna
Carrie.
go to
Come on, Carrie.
Goodwill.
Okay.
Craft night is on.
Put it on.
It's on.
All right. I gotta see, I wanna make sure, I don't like tell staff to show up.
My wife.
Because the school board wants you to come and we need to like, it's
No idea.
It's me and Tish driving.
Well, and my husband driving the car.
That's really mean.
No,
Tish. I
no,
mean,
this is great.
she's great.
Wanna make sure I don't want
hanging out,
any School board is
She's a lot
inviting
of
you,
fun.
they're not coming. So, all right.
They're not-
We'll make it so much fun.
Okay.
I'm gonna make them superintendent sound.
Yes.
And
Go
then
for it.
Tiara.
Awesome.
Can I make a
Okay.
regular?
Tomatoes.
I wanna be a
Do what?
regular attendant. I think it's my-
do we have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Motion.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, we'll see you on December 10th.
No.
Oh,
No, you won't.
7th at the parade. I'll send out a notice to everybody.
Nancy.